You're listening to Mystical Science, the show that reveals the mysteries of the universe, so listeners can live more consciously connected.
Hi, everybody. This is Karen Elkinsin. This is Mystical Science. I'm your host today, and I'm always your host. Our guest is Tim Freke, and the show topic is going to be Soul Story for Deep Awakening and Lucid Living. Tim has, for 40 years, intensively explored philosophy in the practice of spiritual waking. He has the 35 books covers everything from Zen, Hermetic stuff, to Gnosticism. They've been translated in 15 different languages. He has an innovative perspective on the scientific theory of evolution with a fresh understanding of perennial spiritual insights. I like that word perennial. I really kind of had to really look it up, Tim, because it invoked a different sort of thinking about it, right? Because it's reoccurring. So in his latest book, Deep Awake, and the Soul Story, offers a revolutionary approach to the awakening for the 21st century and a visionary understanding of the nature of reality. The best thing what drew me to giving him a call and putting him on the show was his bare feet and his laugh and his intense research. So he seems incredibly casually contagious and honest in his insights and his looking. So welcome, Tim.
It's a pleasure to be here having a conversation with you.
So Tim, here's a question. You say contemporary society is experiencing a soul crisis. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that in the intellectual mainstream, and of course that's not really the majority, but it does govern how culture sees itself. We've seen the rise of science, quite rightfully. It's given us the internet to label us to do this. Its achievements are immense, but it's come at a price because it's very good explaining how things work, and it can't address why things exist. And it's created a spiritual vacuum. And quite literally, it's taken the soul. I mean, by the word soul, for me, what I mean by that is the psyche, which is the ancient Greek word for soul, which we use today often. This other dimension that you and I are having this conversation in. You know, while my mouth moves, there's meaning which you're understanding from the sounds I'm making, and that is not something which exists in the world. It exists in the imagination, the world of images. Well, that's the soul, and that's been the area that spirituality has been studying forever. But what the view that's being pushed forward now is that really is just a byproduct of the body. And what that does is it devalues it, and it takes meaning away from life, because all the meaning is in the soul. And so the view which I come across a lot now is, you know, the universe is amazing and all of the rest of it, but the downside is we're kind of we're on a little rock in the middle of nowhere, hurtling through empty space, here for a few decades, long enough to go, what the heck, and then we're gone, and that's it. There's no meaning, there's no purpose, and none of that is true in my experience of life. So what I've been looking for is, how can I bring together these powerful spiritual insights, which I've been studying for the last decades, all my life, alongside all of these incredible physical and biological insights which science has got to offer us. Because my feeling is that if in my actual experience of reality, they fit together. So how do they fit together?
Well, here's the interesting part to me. I am going to segue, because this reminds me of the Hermetic stuff. This reminds me of the alchemical aspect of the Hermetic practices and our own sensations that arise. And that's in this book as well. We live through our sensations, our imaginations, but in it is that alchemical recognition that there is sort of a woven tapestry of sorts of how we maneuver through time and space and what it means.
Yeah, I mean, science came from somewhere, and where it came from was esoteric studies.
Yeah.
Alchemy became chemistry. It's in the word. That's where it comes from. And alchemy is really alchem. It's the ancient Egyptian. Chem is Egypt. It came from the ancient Egyptian wisdom. So what you see is the resurgence of pagan, gets called pagan wisdom, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Egyptians, which surfaced again in Italy in the Renaissance, gave birth to the modern world, which led to Galileo and Descartes and the Enlightenment, and now to this incredible world where we can talk in completely opposite side of the world, and yet we can be as if we're in the same room together. So science has come from that, which is why really the bringing them back together again is together again is not really right, because what's happened is that in the whole of culture things differentiate. You just go back to everything comes from one thing. So if look at the way that drama, say, and religion have separated. They were once the same thing. You go back to the ancient Egyptian mysteries or the Greek mysteries, they were the same thing, and now we see them as different. We've secularized things, and that's a good thing, actually. But we need to see how they relate, and they do.
Yes, they do. They definitely do.
They've been portrayed as enemies, and they're really not.
No,
they're really not.
Go ahead.
But I do feel like, certainly in the philosophy that I've been developing, I do think both, if we want to bring together spirituality and science, both need to change in their assumptions. That's the key. It's not going to be like, oh, well, science becomes spiritual or spirituality becomes scientific. I think we need a new paradigm, which is as rational as science, but also open to these deep spiritual experiences, which are very real.
All right, we're going to take a small break. So, Tim, before we get really going, because I know we are, where do they find you?
Timfreke.com is the best place. And because I've got such a strange name, as long as you spell it right, Freke, old English name, you will definitely find me. And of course, YouTube, there's lots of videos, and Facebook and all the rest of it.
Yeah, you've got a lot of stuff on your site, that's for sure. And you do workshops and things. Okay. So
live stuff, lots of it. Yeah,
lots of stuff. Okay, so we'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Rekla, Executive Director of Superpower Experts, and we want to thank each of you for making Superpower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter, we now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower Quiz. And as Nivali Rekla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world.
Okay, we're back, and we're here with Tim Freke. We're doing Soul Story for Deep Awakening and Lucid Living. And what we were talking about right before the break was how we converge science and spirituality. I think the way I would say that you're talking about is emergent spirituality.
Yeah, so the key thing for me is, you mentioned all these books I've written. So my first period, too many, but my first period was really looking at the spiritual traditions of the world and going, oh, look, there's something in common here. And that is about awakening to what I call a deep awake state, where there's this profound sense of oneness, there's enormous love, and it brings great meaning to existence. The sense of that life is essentially good and death is essentially safe. So it's a very life-enhancing experience. And it seems to be something similar being said in all these different historical and cultural places. So that led me to this other part, which you mentioned in your title, Lucid Living and Deep Awake, which was like, how can we understand this now? And how can we experience this today? Because the spirituality, like everything, needs to keep evolving. It needs to keep readdressing itself. And so this was my attempt to do that. And then Soul Story, which is the other element in the title, my latest book, is about, okay, so how do we bring a new spirituality together with our new science? And the key idea, I think, is this incredible, I want to say mythos, this story that science now tells about the origins of the universe, which is that for 14 billion years we've been evolving. And that's taken us from a state where there was little more than hydrogen and a bit of helium. 14 billion years later, there's you and me having this conversation. Now, that's an incredible... So, we were once hydrogen. We are the universe. What else could we be? And yet we've gone on this incredible journey. Now, what science has done so far, it started... The idea of evolution started, everyone will know this, with biology and Charles Darwin. And, oh, look, all of life has evolved from one cell. That's an incredible idea, but seems to be true. And then 100 years ago with Big Bang Theory, oh no, it's more than that. The whole of the universe has evolved, not just life. So there's 10 billion years of the evolution of physics, all the galaxies and the chemistry, and then 4 billion years of the evolution of life. And then science stops, and it does that because it only looks at what it can measure with the senses. But actually what's happened is it's led the latest, the cutting edge of that evolutionary process has been the evolution of the psyche, the thing which we're experiencing right now. And that, in our experience, is a non-material dimension full of meaning. It's where things are connected through story, not through causality. So what I'm suggesting, the essence, the simple idea is going, why don't we carry on the story of evolution and go, we've had 10 billion years of the evolution of the physical universe, 4 billion years of the evolution of life, and now we're in the evolution of psyche or soul. And that is what spirituality has always been about. So there's two things I'm saying. I'm saying to science, don't stop at biology. Actually, the evolutionary process has gone on beyond biology into soul, and it's a whole domain. And if you go and explore it, it's immense. It's not just a byproduct of a piece of meat. It is a whole domain of reality which has emerged from biology, just like life has emerged from physics. And then I want to say to spirituality, how about, because spirituality will say, oh, that domain always existed somehow. It's just always been there, and we've fallen from it into the world. It's a very negative view, really. We're trapped in the body, and we've fallen into Maya, and we're caught in this illusion. How about turning that on its head? How about not that we've fallen from anywhere, but we're growing into it, that the universe is becoming greater and greater, and that the world that the spirituality explores is not the primal world we've fallen from, but the most emergent level of reality towards which we are going.
All right. Can you explain, because I get the part of it, but it's so eloquently written in the book, because it talks more about the soul levels and the soul dimensions. And you and I talked a bit about how illusion, we cheat ourselves when we just call it illusion.
Well, the place where we were exploring before about time, one of the things I hear a lot is that in science and spirituality is that time is an illusion, and people are very attracted to that idea because I think they feel trapped in it. But I don't think time is an illusion. I think time is the fundamental nature of reality. There's what I see if I look at my experience right now is there is always change, and change is time essentially. Now, how you measure it and whether it goes faster and slower and how it's relative to each other, like Einstein stuff, all of that's up for grabs. But that any experience is made of time seems unavoidable, and the very foundation of my philosophy is a new understanding of time, which goes, when I look at my experience right now, everyone listening to this, try it with me. What I see is it has two qualities. One is it's always something new. So it's an emergent, creative, evolving process. And the new thing is always a transformation of the old thing. So the past hasn't gone anywhere, it seems to me. It seems to me the past is implicit in the moment. It's accumulating. There's more and more past. And all of everything, our first meeting, our first conversations, learning to speak English, the evolution of the human species, the Big Bang, everything is present in this moment now. And without it, this moment would not exist. So this is a whole different notion of time. However, I think the great spiritual insight is there is also something timeless and formless. And I think that's also true. So that if I look at my experience right now, and what I notice is that it's made up of infinitely different qualities. There's evolving qualities, evolving information. But there's one quality that everything has, and that's being. Everything that exists has this quality that it exists. It is. Even empty space has that quality. And so I think essentially that quality of being has no particular form. It's formless. And because it's formless, it doesn't change. So it's timeless. So we have something which is, that doesn't change, which is the potential for everything in the process of becoming all of these different forms. And it's emergent because as time accumulates, there's more and more of the past, and it becomes richer and more complex until you go from hydrogen to human beings experiencing this non-material world of the psyche or the soul, having meaning and images. That's how far we've come. And that's what this process is. So if I look at if I wanted to say what's the vision that can unite science and spirituality, it's that existence is being in the process of becoming in ever more emergent ways. That's what this is that we're in. And it's such a beautiful, expansive vision. And it's taken us from physics, which is cause and effect, and has no meaning, right the way through to psyche, which is a story. It has tons of meaning. And that meaning is the most emergent level of reality, and we're in it right now. The universe has become the story of you and me. That's the journey it's been on.
I like the way you say it's culture is but an artifact of a psyche.
Yeah, everything, like we live now. We right now are absolutely living in the products of the imagination, aren't we? I mean, I'm looking at you on a screen, and we're talking in different countries through the internet and on computers. Everything I can see, apart from the beautiful fields out the window, have been through the human imagination. Even the fields out the window have kind of gone through the imagination. They've been cultured, and that's how big the psyche is. So to cut reality off and go, oh yeah, there's biology, and then this thing we call the psyche or the soul, it's not really real, and that is ridiculous. It's the most emergent level, and we live in it. That's what culture is, but it's beyond that. It's also, it seems to me, and this is a more complex argument to make quickly, but it seems to me that realm exists in its own right now. So the central spiritual idea is that the psyche, when the body dies, the psyche does not die, because the psyche is not made of biology, and life and death applies just to biology. So what that's essentially saying is, hey, that experience you're having now of thinking and dreaming and imagining, and that you can go really deep in it when you sleep, or you can, you take ayahuasca or something like that, you just off you go. That doesn't end when the body ends. And that's a central idea in spirituality. And I think we can make sense of that within a scientific paradigm if we use this evolutionary model, that the information that makes up the universe has evolved onto a non-material or a transmaterial level. That's really what I'm saying.
I think of you with your bare feet giving your classes. It is the sensation. It is the imagination. And if you look at Rodin's work as a science guy, where the fountain of life literally is constantly emerging in like a Rubik's Cube, where you're always reshuffling the deck, but it's always being pushed into light of who and what we are. So without the sensation and the I, which pulls in light, pulls in your story, because that's really what you're doing. Your brain's working like a TV screen, where your body is with you projecting your story.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot there, really. But just, the thing I'm drawn to pick up on is the I, because this is where the work I did on deep spirituality and the stuff I'm doing on science really, really get exciting. Because it seems to me that what's happening right now is that we've been through the evolution of the physical world, the biological world, and then this soul dimension that we're in, of the psyche. But there's something new happening, and it's been happening for a while, but it's really happening much more now, which is that we can now take our attention and place it on our deep being. Now, this is what awakening has always been about. And when you do that, the ancient teachings you'll find in all the mystical traditions is your essential nature is formless, which sounds a bit crazy, but what it's really saying is the thing which is looking right now has no shape or color. The thing which is listening makes no sound. The quality we call I is formless. Well, that's interesting. And also that when you hit it, you discover this incredible oneness with everything. Now, what fascinates me about that from this evolutionary story is I think what that's saying is when you become conscious of your being, not your being Tim or Karen or being, but just your pure being, it is that formless, timeless essence, which is from the foundation of everything that's arising. And I think that's what the mystics have always been pointing to. And when you do that, there's one of us. And so there's one being arising as all of these different forms of being, of which you and I are two. And through that experiencing itself. And that fits perfectly coherently, I think, with both the scientific and the mystical essential insights.
Tim, isn't there a process you do in one of your workshops where it has to do with looking into the other person's eyes and it's making that soul connection? You want to explain that? Because I've done that with people, and it actually, you lose yourself into the universe.
Oh my God, it is unbelievable. So for 20 years, I stumbled into what people call gazing these days, soul-to-soul meditations. And now it's getting more and more popular, but at the time I hadn't never done it myself. I just did it by accident. And I've just done a retreat, literally just finished, where over New Year's Eve, I and every other participant looked into the eyes of 35 other people. And by the end of that, the love and the oneness, you're like wading through it. It is so deep. There's so much beauty. You just see so much richness in each individual, and then through the individual, you see this profound oneness. And the simple insight which came to me, which I've been exploring, is, when I look at you right now, it's easy because I'm looking at a screen. But even if we were face to face, I'd be looking at your, it's a lovely face. There's your body. It's unique. It's beautiful. But what I'm connecting with is your soul. That's really what I'm interested in, which is your psyche, where there's your story, there's all your thoughts, there's your reactions to what I say, there's the richness that makes you you. And then I can look even deeper and go, hey, but deeper than that, I'm looking at the thing which is looking back, so that my deep being is connecting with your deep being. And when that happens, that formless oneness in me connects with the formless oneness in you. And suddenly the one is connecting with itself through being two. And that's experienced by the individual as the most enormous love, communion. And so now, I still do lead individual meditations, but my method to help people experience this deep awake state, the oneness and love, is to get them to connect with others. And then then we wake up each other. It does all of the work. I can't begin to say how powerful it is. And not just by looking, you can do it through listening, you can do it lots of ways. It's just extraordinary.
There's a part you talk about the ego, and the ego in a good way.
Yes.
So, because I think that's fundamental.
Yeah, this is all part of this, because so one of the great things that I feel like I wanted to challenge working with spirituality was this down we have on our individual self. You go to kind of the non-dual world, you're here, you don't even exist. You're an illusion. And what's stopping you waking up to oneness? It's your belief that you're an individual. And if you go to the more traditional things, Buddhism, in some forms, for instance, then most of your human characteristics are the problem. You have attachments to your dreams, to your loved ones. You have desires. You have everything that makes you human. You think about the past and the future when you should only be present in the now. All of these things that make you a human are deemed to be a problem and in the way of your enlightenment. I think that's completely wrong. I think our humanity is beautiful. I think it's fine. And in fact, I think our individuality, far from being in the way, is the foundation from which we wake up to oneness. So the one wakes up to oneness through being a someone. And that's why what we call the ego, which just means the I, that's all it is. That thing that, it's not perfect. Tim is a mixed bag. There's things about Tim, I think, which are really great, but if you hung out with him long enough, you'd find other things about him you didn't like so much. Of course. And I suspect that's, it's been true of everyone I've ever met so far. So I'm guessing it's true of all of us. Why? Because we're evolving. Well, you can't evolve if you're already perfect. You evolve because you're not. And I'm definitely evolving, and I'm pleased about that. But as I evolve, my soul, and don't forget we said earlier, look, you're made of time. Everything is made of time. Who is Tim? He's everything Tim's ever experienced. That's who he is. And that, as that evolves, I can engage with these deeper and deeper states of awakening. So that rather than it being in the way, the separate self, the individual, a work in progress, is evolving into something that can support these profound, beautiful, deep awake states. And it means we can be kind to ourselves and kind to each other.
Oh, yeah. So
instead of constantly thinking, oh, I'm the problem, I'm in the way. And who can't, if you're told that your problem is you, who can't go, yeah, that sounds about right. but it doesn't help us. It doesn't help us. You know, the reason that so many people have such a profound experience, like in this retreat at New Year, is because I don't say that to them. I just go, look, I know you're imperfect, so am I. That's all right. Let's just be okay with that. And then let's find these deep states anyway.
You know, okay, I'm going to go back to the thought here, because we got the personal, and then when we go to our collective consciousness, and I think religion is, even though fundamentally they have the same principles, and yet we are so like dogs peeing on a fire hydrant. Each one has their markings, right? And it makes for such a difficult conversation. But at the same time, my idea is, can't we find the common ground and our common roots and get along?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's right. And my first work really was about trying to articulate these common themes.
Yeah.
Now that still needs to go on, and people are doing that work. Now I've moved on personally and felt like, no, what we really need now, we live in this incredible world, don't we? Look, the wisdom of the world is literally on my phone. I can access anything within seconds. Extraordinary. So the opportunity for immense eclecticism, and one finding what I like and you finding what you like, and all of that's great. But we need a unifying vision as well. We need to find a new narrative. And I did a TEDx talk at Berkeley, a really big TEDx talk. And what I ended with that, which I think is true, is that I think a new understanding is coming, and it will unite science and spirituality. And when it comes, it will be as big a shift as the arising of science was 300 to 400 years ago. It will usher in a complete new period of human culture. And that's really what we need to do.
You had an aha moment. Was that part? Because I remember I watched your stuff since I put you're in the magazine, so I'm on your list, right? Not long ago, you had a revelation of some sort that you weren't quite ready to sort of divulge. Was something going deep inside of you? You want to say what it was? Does it relate to that, Tim?
Well, the experience was the most profound encounter with what, for a better word, I would call God, with the universe conscious of itself. And my image of God is probably not the traditional one. I don't think God is where the universe comes from. I think it's where the universe is going. I think God is the universe conscious of itself. I think the universe is flowering from pure being, which has no qualities. It's flowering into the most emergent quality possible, which is the universe conscious of itself. A bit like, I was once an egg and a sperm, and I've grown into Tim. The universe is growing into God. And that is a conscious oneness. And when I experience it, it's this most enormous love. And what happened to me in November was I was catapulted deep into that, and did temporarily leave Tim behind. He was still there. He was just lying down and had no idea I was in the room or what was going on. But I was catapulted into this incredible light. And it was in response actually to thinking about what happens when you die. And I got a mini death, I think. And it was just utterly blissful, utterly sublime. And as I came back from that experience, what was interesting for me was that first my soul came into focus, not my body, and then my body, and then I was eventually back. And there was such gratitude for my individuality and for my body, old as it is now, I'd like to carry me around, and such a profound endorsement of this ideas I'm exploring. It really was. It was like, it felt like my message for me personally from the experience was, you're on the right track. This is what you should be doing. And it was a transcendent experience in which I left the personal behind for a while, and then it came back and was a total endorsement of the personal. And that's, I think, the essential spiritual message in what I do, which is, look, we can come into this place and it is transcendental, and there is one of us, and it is beyond anything you can say. And then we come back to the personal, not to negate it, but to empower it, to appreciate it, to see the beauty in each other, and to encourage the goodness that we can bring to the world.
Let me ask a question, because I know, you kind of dabble in it a bit, because there's so much light and dark. There's the shadow and the wave. And you see sometimes life is rich, and sometimes it's mundane, and then sometimes it's good, and sometimes it feels evil.
Yep.
Is there a way to explain that in sort of this mystical sort of way? Go for it.
Yeah, I think the really deep way to get that, I mean, all of it can play a role in our story, can't it? I mean, we can, we have the ability to make meaning from it, and some of the worst things turn into the great wisdom that we carry with us and make us compassionate, all the rest of it. But that doesn't justify suffering. When I think of the suffering of a little child or something like that, it's still like, no, that's not good enough. It doesn't explain it. It just says we can make something of it. For me, it's that it's the different levels of emergence. It's like I have a body, and my body's biological, and it's limited by biology, and that means that right now I have pain in my elbow, and because of something that's happening to my joints. And that's painful. I have to live with that. I also have to live with the necessity of nature. I have to live with the way that the universe works. I have to live with all the less emergent levels of culture. I have to live with the fact that some people seem to be living still in the Middle Ages, and to be doing things which I thought we'd left behind centuries ago, but not everyone has. So I have to live with cause and effect. I have to live with everything that's given birth to me. I have to live with and accommodate. And sometimes that causes great suffering. And when we think of evil, the image that comes to me is, and a great archetype of evil in the modern world would be someone like Adolf Hitler. And what's fascinating about Adolf Hitler is that if he'd lived 2,000 years ago, he would be called Adolf the Great, like we called Alexander the Great, because people who ravaged the world and caused huge wars were then called the Great, Charlemagne or any of these people. But he was in the 20th century, and we needed to have left that behind by then. And so it was not great, it was evil. And that's what happens. As we evolve, we leave these things behind, and we are evolving well. We live in a much more compassionate world than our ancestors did, much more. And that's where we grow from evil. And so the final thing I want to say about that is that this is why this evolutionary story is so beautiful. It redeems the evil because we can move beyond it to the good. It's a totally hopeful, redeeming philosophy. It goes, look, we're moving towards God. We're moving towards something so sublime, and we just need to keep evolving. And that allows me to live with the terrors as well as the beauty of life.
It makes me think when I look at your idea of a timeline, but we even encapsulated within this little dot in this time and space, even on our planet, has multiple dimensions of different evolutionary processes.
They're all going on, so everything is evolving.
Yeah.
Matter's still evolving. It's just very, 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 very slow. And biology is still evolving, and that can be fairly fast, but not that fast. But look at your psyche. My psyche is evolving now, having this conversation with you. It's happening right now as we speak. That's how fast it's going on. And then as it issues into culture, look how fast culture is evolving now. Okay. So that, whoosh, we're in this new world.
Think of mysticism, because this is called mystical science. Is there anything about the mystical, we've discussed quite a bit of it, that triggers you that you would like to say to the audience, whether... Yeah,
there is, and it's usually something I like to start with, but it'd be lovely to end with it. Which is, I'm sharing these ideas, a life spent inquiring, and I do think understanding is really valuable, but it's all predicated on the mystery, and mystery is the same word as mysticism. It comes from the same root, which means eyes closed, mystai in Greek. And it's because we're dealing with something which will always be beyond any definition. And for me, I want to hold that as well. So I want to find the deepest understanding I possibly can, whilst not losing the sense of wonder in the infinite mystery of what we're embedded in. And that's the journey for me, to have both of those. And I wake up to the mystery, and then I deepen my understanding, and then I can wake up to the mystery more.
You remind me of when you said that. I remember I have a son. I have one. I did it once. But I walked him to school, and all the times you forget what it is for that person to learn to learn to walk, to pick up a spoon, look at the snowflake, to look at the frost, and to look at, they always talk about in the spiritual traditions, to really walk in wonder. And when we get older, we sometimes forget, and having a son was the reemergence for me.
Isn't that perfect? Isn't that perfect? I had exactly the same experience.
Did you?
Just at the point where I was most sucked into time and responsibility and all the rest of it, suddenly there was a little being going, hey, come into the moment and splash in the puddles. And there was one particular moment I will always remember where I was teaching him words, leaf, puddle.
Yeah.
And then we do words, and then we dance in the puddles. And you see it's beautiful rhythm of life that you get that. And for me, I think of myself as what I call a paralogical or both and thinker. I want both. I'm greedy. I don't want this or that. I want both. And my feeling as adults, that's important. We remember we are still kids. And that's the being in the moment thing. We can still be kids playing in the moment, but we don't want to be just kids playing in the moment. And what fascinated me about being a parent with young children is they wanted me to be in both. They didn't want me to be just in the moment with them, another child. They wanted me to be looking out for danger, looking after them, competent. I needed to be in time, not in the moment, but I could be in the moment as well.
Yeah.
And I could move between. And that's this, this is what happens to us as we get older. I used to think about that the journey was about becoming more conscious. I don't think that anymore. I now think it's about becoming conscious of more.
Uh-huh. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's better. And it happens on a very obvious, mundane level with a child. You can see them becoming conscious of more. And then it doesn't stop. And as you get older and you move into a spiritual phase of your life, it's like it can really take off until you can, the big more that you can become conscious of is the oneness of being. And that's when you go, oh, there's one of us. Wow. There's one of us appearing as all of these different qualities. So when I meet you, I have the beauty of meeting someone who is not me and is also me. And that is love.
You know, it was when the one, and then we'll conclude, but I love this. When I started doing my own research on the science and the spirituality and all that, because that's been for me 10 years of the magazine and then accumulating to the book, the interesting part to me was to recognize that oneness, but the oneness was when you started looking at how your hands are shaped and the proportion of your body, everything was based on like the Fibonacci series. And then all of a sudden you go out and look at a walk. It's the same way the trees are made. It's the same way the flowers unfold. And then you realize it really is all one.
Yeah.
But
it's evolving patterns. This is what when I say the past accumulates, it's not just like a weight. It is the wisdom of the universe. The universe is learning, and we are learning as a very, very emergent example of what the universe has always been doing. So that as Rupert Sheldrake says, or originally it comes from the American philosopher Peirce, Charles Sanders Peirce, it's like the universe has habits. It doesn't fall. There's not laws of nature. There's habits, and everything repeats. So another word for that in the modern world would be algorithms. It's like the whole thing is you've got this complex algorithms, and everything is like that. And we're at this most emergent level. And the key thing for us is that our souls are also algorithms. I think in this way, I talk in this way, I move my hands in this funny way, all those things. But we are conscious, and so we get to change and create our own algorithms. We get to create our own souls. And maybe this is a nice inspirational place to end, because I find it deeply inspirational, is that then you look at life and you go, oh, this is a process of actually forming my soul. This is soul formation. Because I am everything I've experienced. And so I'm now, right now, in this moment, I am forming who I am and will always be. And the one thing I'll take with me when I die is who I am, which is everything I've ever experienced. That's what I'll take with me. And you've only got to listen to people who've had near-death experiences, and what do they find? All of their past is there. It's what we are. So we can form our souls. We form who we are. And then the way that we formed it in the past governs how we are in the future. And that's so full of meaning. I can't begin to say. It just feels like, yeah, right. That's how significant this process we are in is. And it's not just sometimes, it's all the time, every moment.
It invites the conversation of saying to live your life consciously creating, making choices, instead of just, letting it be random. So, Tim, where do they find you? And thank you for such a delicious conversation this morning.
It's been a real delight. So Tim Freke, Freke, timfreke.com will get you to all the information about my live events. I have a community now called the International Community of Unividuals. And we do a lot of online stuff. I love the idea. I have this idea of a unividual, which is an individual who's conscious of unity. So this awakening, I feel like the transition that in the evolutionary process that's happening now is from individuals into unividuals, who are still individuals, but now they're conscious that they are the universe. And so we gather together, we do things online, and then I've got loads of stuff on YouTube, and I'm doing these What is Life conversations with some of the greatest thinkers on the planet. And yeah, if you're attracted to these ideas, I'd love to discuss them with you. I've got online philosophy groups happening, and I'm just as committed as I can be to sharing as many ideas as I can while I can.
Yeah, I was going to tell everybody, you're doing some very big interviews, and yeah, so definitely check out his website. You will find lots and lots of juicy bits, courses, and all kinds of things. He travels the world, so don't miss that. So thank you very much, everybody, and I'm going to invite you to go to sciencetosage.com. I will link with this, the magazine that I did with Tim. He's the lead in it, and I read his book and then got to play. It was kind of fun. Normally it's very, has a lot more words, but with Tim, I got to play with a lot of the pictures because he's playful. And so that made it a whole lot more fun to go. So definitely go to sciencetosage.com, check it out. And thank you, everybody. And thank you, Tim.
It's been a real pleasure.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the superpower quiz today.